What's going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to ram as much high ticket sales sauce into your brain. So if you're a high ticket coach or service provider, this video is going to give you some secret sauce that allows clients of mine to close at an average of 70% when the industry standard is 10K. The first thing I really want you to understand is that no longer is 2.5K truly high ticket. Okay. If we look at something as trivial as the cost of eggs between 2017 and 2025, the price of that product has gone up 246%. Now, the high ticket sales space really started to blow up back in 2017, but a lot of time has passed and a lot of things have changed. So if you're a high ticket coach and you're still struggling to close people at 2.5K or 3K, right, you're doing something wrong and something has got to change. Firstly, right, if we get your closing rate up to 70%, no longer do you need 2 calls a day to scale to a measly 10K a month. You're only going to need to be pitching about 6 to 7 people every month, pardon me. Okay, so this then becomes much more achievable, getting like 10 to 12 calls in the calendar. Now, first things first is that sales, right, it all comes down to this. Just like in a relationship or a marriage or something, right? A high commitment decision like, say, marriage takes or it requires a lot of certainty from the woman's part to feel safe making that commitment. And it's the same thing when it comes to sales. If you're charging 2.5K, that's obviously a lower commitment than 25K or 12K. So the whole name of the game in sales is building so much of this certainty. Now, you may say, okay, Matt, well, that's obvious, right? Well, if you knew that and you were really applying the right strategies, you wouldn't be facing objections, which you likely are. Objections like time to think about it, or let me speak with my partner, or send me more info. Sounds good, man. Send me the link and I'll get it taken care of. All of these things are what we call certainty-based objections. The real objection isn't the lack of info, and the real objection isn't that they need to speak with their partner, or the real objection isn't that they need time to think about it. The real objection is you, the coach or the salesperson, have not yet made me feel safe in making this decision. And thus, I'm going to ask for time to think about it, to meditate on it, or to pray about it. Okay. So all of those objections are classic examples of certainty-based objections. And your job on a sales call is to build so much of this certainty that it becomes a fuck yes decision and they're excited to get started. Now, how you're going to do that, this is a concept I teach clients, which is the 2 islands. Okay, so you've got to identify, where is this prospect right now, your IDC, ideal client. Where are they right now? Where are they looking to get to? Understand that you are not selling your coaching program, but rather you're selling the transformation. You need to future pace. That's a really powerful sales strategy. You need to future pace the prospect and get him to visualize his goals actualized. How is he going to feel having made this personal transformation, right? How does his lifestyle change? How does this affect things for his loved ones? As a result, does he feel powerful? Does he feel strong? How does he feel different versus his current state? Okay, so that is the future pacing strategy, right? It's a sales technique that we employ heavily with clients of ours, okay? Then further, before you ever go to try and close the prospect on your strategy, okay, a favorite book that I recommend to clients all the time is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the core principles in there is seek first to understand your prospect. So you've got to understand, yes, his pain points, of course, right? But further, you want to understand, what has this guy tried and failed with in the past? Because look, it's 2025, and if you're selling a marketing solution, a B2B solution, a weight loss solution, or a dating solution, this guy has probably tried shit and failed. He's probably watched hundreds of hours of content on YouTube. He's probably attended seminars, read books, etc., etc. And he has failed, and he is still stuck in this reality. And with each failure, he develops a little bit of a mindset or limiting beliefs that are holding him back. So you're going to want to identify, what are these limiting beliefs? And then ultimately, from his perspective, what does he think is actually holding him back? Okay, so you can see this here is a strategy I teach to clients. It's the strategy for sales calls. That is Situation, emotion, gap, enlighten, transform. Situation is this picture right here. Where is he currently? Where is he looking to get to? What is he trying at the moment? Why does he think it's not working? Emotion is how is all this making him feel right now? And how would he feel when he achieves all of this? Again, that's that future pacing piece we talked about. And then the gap, right? That's this distance right here between where he is and his goal. Or, right, what are these 3 blocks from his perspective that are keeping him stuck? And once you identify, or rather, once you get the prospect to self-identify what's actually keeping him stuck, running this 3-block exercise, then you're going to say, hey man, okay, so you can see that these are the things that are keeping you stuck. Do you want to see how we would tackle this if you were a client of mine? Okay, and only at that point do you start to lay out your methodology, your process, your strategy. Because one of the worst things that can happen on a sales call is that you jump right into how you can help this prospect and he says, yeah, I'm already doing that. Okay. Reality is he probably isn't. He's probably trying something similar, but there's all sorts of holes in his strategy. So you want to identify what is he doing at the moment and why is it not working? And then once you identify why it's not working or what's keeping him stuck, only then do you want to enlighten him on how your process is different. Okay, so this is the SEGGET system. This is how clients of ours build this 10 out of 10 certainty on the sales call and eliminate all of these types of certainty-based objections. Now, there is also, of course, obstacle objections. There is prospects that flat out just cannot afford your service, no matter how much they may want to do it. Okay, so this is why we always want to qualify the prospect before we even get them on a sales call with you. Okay, so firstly, in our business and with our clients, we typically run a 2-call sales process. So this is taken from my experience as a digital marketing consultant for Google. If you don't know, I worked for Google over 2 years working digital ads, so Google ad sales, new business, and then working in enterprise sales. And we would always conduct like a need assessment with the prospect first, where we identify, what are they trying? What's their budget? We would always do that before we ever get into pitching or investing time into pitching prospects. Because just like in a dating scenario, you wouldn't spend all this time trying to seduce a woman that's happily married. You're going to identify if she's single. Okay. It's the same thing. You want to identify that they actually have the finances. Very easy for me to do in the B2C, but this is how you're going to do that in the B2B space. So first and foremost, okay, you're going to run that coffee chat, go through like your Calendly questions, probe around, seek first to understand the prospect and then to be understood. Okay, but once you get to the end of that call, you're going to be like, hey man, so obviously we were on this call today to talk about whatever your niche is. Talk about, say, your relationships. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your satisfaction with your relationships right now? And say he says 3 out of 10. Okay, and you might go into that further and be like, okay, and specifically with your dating life, blah, 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 what about your social circle, etc. Okay, but ultimately you're going to go, okay, man, so have you ever heard this? Socrates had his 3 keys to the good life. Okay, so personally, I studied politics before I ever got into this. I studied political theory, and this is where I picked this up from. Okay, the most common objection people face is typically finances, and it is amazing that, I learned how to handle this by studying politics of all things. Okay, so this is my own insight, my own imprint into this space. Okay, so you're going to be like, okay, man, have you ever heard about the Socrates 3 keys, right, to the good life? Prospect says no. Cool. So obviously we're here talking about relationships, but it's not the only area of life. So Socrates said like health, wealth, relationships. If we have each of these things well developed, we're in a pretty good place. But you can imagine that you'd be like 6-pack shredded, great health, and you can have all the money and all the wealth, right? But if you're completely alone and you have no social circle, no friends, no partner, that would be pretty miserable, right? Prospect says, yeah. Okay, so further, right, you could have great relationships and great health, but if your wealth is in shambles, you probably need to get that handled as well, right? So for context, man, how would you rate your health on a 1 to 10? Would you say you're like just getting by at like a 3, 4, 5 out of 10? Or like, you're going to the gym, you got good mental clarity, you're eating well, you're taking care of yourself, and there's no kind of scary news coming from the doctor. Is that you? Prospect says yes. Okay, so cool. Talk to me about wealth. How are you doing on a 1 to 10 there? There's obviously room for growth, but like, you're saving money every month. You're even getting to invest a little bit. You're keeping your head above water, that kind of thing. Or is it like really tight right now? Prospect tells you, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you place that? Say he says 7. You can even go further. Okay, that's a good indication, but you would then go further and you'd be like, okay. So for context though, man, like, what would a 10 out of 10 be for you? Or even based in like past experience and stuff, what has the best you've ever done financially actually look like? And he'll say, oh, I was doing 100K a year, 10K a month. And you're like, okay, so 100K would be a 10 out of 10. And then you said you're a 7 out of 10 at the moment. So does that mean you're making about 70 a year? All right, prospect is going to say yes or no. And right there, you know how much they're making every month. And basing that, right, you basically contrast that with the cost of living in his city. And you're going to understand if he's able to save every month and if he's going to be able to do this on a payment plan or paid in full. Okay, so these are some of the core strategies when it comes to, one, building this red hot certainty, and then secondly, qualifying the prospect. Because if you know that the prospect has the money, right, they have the finances, the only other thing you need to do is build this 10 out of 10 red hot certainty, and you will get the yes. Okay, now there's obviously a lot of nuance. This is what we do with clients, but even further, you can actually start to build a lot of this certainty in the prospect before the sales call by implementing what we call pre-call persuasion. So especially if you're in the coaching space, you got to understand that ultimately it's like you're guiding the prospect to the top of the mountain. They kind of need to see that you've been there. So they need to be familiar with your hero's journey. Now, if you're a high ticket coach, you're looking to scale your business beyond 10K a month. So if you're just getting started, you've got no revenue coming in, our solution is probably not for you. You can by all means get some of our free resources. But if you're looking to get to 10, 15, 20, 30, 40K and beyond, we might be the right guys to actually help you, right? If you're just getting started, it's probably not the right fit. But if you are struggling with these kind of objections that we talked about, get yourself booked in for a free one-to-one strategy session with me. And I'll actually set you up with some of our resources to start pre-handling objections before they even come up and achieve that 70% closing rate as well. Okay. So click the link down below this video and I'll see you on that call. Peace.